Alrighty, quilters, here I have a bunch of 2.5 inch strips that are, well, they're 2.5 by width of fabric. I'm working on a new pattern and it involves these strip sets, okay? So I've got 4 of them here because that's what my pattern calls for. This also works for the Bargello quilt, like I mentioned earlier. The same process, at least. What we're gonna do is we're gonna sew, I've got 4 here, see, and they're labeled fabric 1, 2, 3, and 4. I don't even know if you can see that on the camera or not, but they are. I am going to sew 1 to 2, then I'm gonna sew 3 to 4, and if I had more, I would do the same thing, 5 to 6, 7 to 8, 9 to 10, etc., until I get all of my pairs done. Now, one of the kind of tricky things to this, I've got to do this 3 times, so I'm going to set these aside, make it 1 of each, and set the rest aside. One of the tricky things about this is actually keeping track of which side you sew from, because we're going to sew one direction on all of these. All of the first pairs are going to go in one direction, and then when we sew the next set, we're going to sew from the other direction. The point of that is to keep your fabric from bowing, so the edge of your quilt will be straight-ish versus going like this. We'll see how well that looks when I actually watch this video later. But that's the thought process behind this type of sewing technique, where we sew them in pairs, and then the pairs to quads, and the quads to 8. I don't know what that word is. So what I'm gonna do is I like to take a little pin or clip or something so that I know which side is my starting side for the first round. And I wouldn't recommend actually like writing anything unless you're using non-erasable pens, which you can very well can do. You can use, sorry, I'm not quite used to my new setup yet. This is just a fabric marker. It's not going to erase, but if you mark it on the wrong side and mark it, whoop, there we go, in the selvage, because the selvages will be cut off eventually, but until they are cut off, you can mark it. So I always say wrong side just in case. So this is the side I'm going to sew from on this one, my first round. And then I'm going to do the same thing on this one. This is where I'm going to start. Now, I normally put the odd on top just because I do. I don't know if there's a rhyme or a reason for that. I just kind of always put the odd one on top. Don't know. If you do that, then the next time you do it, your evens will all be on top, and then it'll still come out correctly. So then you don't have to keep track of right and wrong. But that's a little harder to do when you've got 20 some fabrics in a Bargello. So I brought my odd on top because that's the way I am. I'm actually sewing 3 to 4 right now. I'm going to do my 1/4 inch seam all the way down, and then I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to mark and do the same thing on fabrics 1 and 2. Why did I start with 3 and 4? Because they're closer to me. All right, ready? Let's go. Oh, be helpful if I actually plug my foot in. That's a good video. I thought a blooper or 2. Alrighty. That is fabric 1 or fabric 3 and 4 sewn together. Now I'm going to mark and do fabrics 1 and 2. And again, I'm going to put the odd one on top. That's the side I'm going to sew from. You're not gonna be able to see it very well on this dark one, but I will know it's there because it's the same on both sides. All right, my odd on top, sewing from the side I marked, and I'm gonna run it through. Now, if you'll notice, this is the same fabric line, but yet these don't match up at the end. They are both marked 42 inches wide, or 44 inches, but you know, just the way things work. All right, ready? Let's go. All right, you're gonna go through and do that for all of your strip sets on your pattern. Okay? Now, you're gonna iron it. depending on what you're working on, I recommend ironing in a very specific way. My iron is off right now, but I'm going to show you. I am going to put fabric 3 on top, so my odd is back on top, and then I'm going to iron it toward my odd. Okay, and that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to iron it toward the odd. All right, this is important for Bargellos, not so much the pattern that this fabric is actually for, but I'm going to iron toward the odd. Same thing with the other one. Which one's my odd one? The darker one's the odd one. So I would set it down, press my seams, and then flip it and iron toward the odd. And I'll be right back after I get that done. Hey everybody, we're back after pressing, and I want you to see that I pressed toward the odd on all of this all the way down. I mean, it's not perfect, but that's how I roll. This is the side we started with earlier. You can see my little marks. See my little marks? That's the side we started with. So now we're going to sew our next sets together. I've got all of them, all 20, 30, whatever I've got sewn into really long strip sets of 2. Now I'm going to sew them from sets of 2 to sets of 4. So that means number 3 is gonna, or number 2 is gonna be sewn to number 3. And then hold on, where are we at? 5, 6 is gonna be sewn to 7. That makes sense? And then you go down the board. But this is the side we sewed from last time. We are going to flip this over and sew from the other side this time. How do I know it's the second side? Well, they're not perfectly lined up. I like to make sure short ones are lined up. Gives me the most usable fabric. And then we're gonna sew from this side now all the way down. You ready? Let's go over here and do so. Welcome back. Now you're probably asking me, Sarah, you had me sew, or had me iron to the odd. So now my fabric looks like this. What is going on? Now which way do I need to iron? Now we're gonna iron toward the even. Nope, we're still ironing toward the odd. Hold on, 1, 2, 3, 4. We're gonna iron toward the even now. So it's going toward 2, so that you get 2 in, and the next one will be 2 out, and then 2 in, 2 out, 2 out. And that's how it's gonna go through. But you're gonna sew all of your next sets together. So you have 4, and iron, or press, I'm sorry, don't iron, you're pressing toward the lower number. So toward 2 in this case, okay? So we're gonna iron it, press it, sorry, that direction. Not this way. We don't want them all going in the same direction. We want it to go in opposite directions. And I will show you why once we get some stuff cut. All right, I'm gonna iron this and I'll be right back. And welcome back again. All right, I have my strip set. Now this can be 4 long, like in this case. It could be 10 long, 18 long, 20 long, 30 long, however long you want it. Or it needs to be according to the pattern. Now when it comes to cutting, the biggest thing you need to do is try to get it to fit on the board. So if it is super, super long, I would fold it in half, maybe in quarters, but that's really pushing it. If you can get away with just folding it in half once, and then making sure when you do that, so if you have to fold it in half, making sure that these seams nest all the way along where you're going to be cutting is going to make it a lot easier on you. So the seam would nest here and here and here all the way down. I hope that made sense. Maybe I'll have to do my Bargello quilt and show you guys later. But for now, we're just doing a 4 strip. Now my pattern says to cut this at 6 inches. We're gonna cut 6 inches, 6 inches, 6 inches. There's 6 inches, and 2 at 1.5 inches. First step is always to get a nice straight line here. when you are lining this up, you're gonna cut off the selvage first of all. You want to be lining up on the sew lines. They should be matching up because I have 2.5-inch strips. These should be 2-inch exactly, depending on how good you are at actually following 1/4 inch. Me, I did pretty darn good. I am super impressed with this, actually. Like, super impressed. But I'll just move on how awesome I am. So I'm getting a nice clean cut. Watch my thumb. Hopefully I'm not blocking the camera too much. There we go. Now, another little tip, when you're cutting these big long ones, try not to move the fabric that is laid out all perfectly and you know all the points match. Try to move the cutting board or walk around the cutting board if possible. I can't move my cutting board, or I can't walk around my cutting board, but I can move it. Let's make sure you can still see. Yep, you guys can still see. Awesome. Now, this hasn't moved, so this line should still be relatively straight. I have to cut a 6-inch block. This happens to be a 6.5-inch wide ruler. I need a 6.5-inch block. Line it up on my edge. 6.5 inches. I promise it's 6.5 inches. Cut. Now, before you pull this away, put this down and kind of put some weight here because it might stick at the seams because you're cutting through 2 layers of fabric here instead of just one. And depending on how sharp or dull your blade is, that might cause issues. So before you move the fabric, this fabric, try and move this one first and make sure it's all good. That is beautiful. Look at that. Now, I do have to move my fabric to get it back on the board. I'm gonna go over here. When it's small like this, I'm not super concerned about it. But when I do my next cut, I'm gonna check that my lines are still straight. You never know. So that's one cut. I have to cut 6 of these. 1, 2. So that gives me my 2 little ones. And wow, that was just about on. Huh? Alrighty. Now, you're probably wondering why I made you iron it every other direction. The reason is simple. When you're doing Bargellos, you're always offsetting. So you cut it, you're gonna go like this when you do a Bargello. Okay? And the next one's gonna be down lower. And then the one after that might be up higher, might go back up one. So you get the shapes, right? Now, when you iron every other direction, what ends up happening is all the seams, and I'm gonna do this on the big one, all the seams nest. Make sure I'm doing this right. So the seams will nest perfectly. And hopefully the camera can get these like that. If you don't iron it every other direction, you will have to go back and every other one of these iron whoosh, in one direction. I don't like ironing twice. I don't even like ironing the first time. But to save myself time and effort, because what'll end up happening when you're doing Bargellos, normally you'll take this one off and put it up top, or you make a circle. I'll show you guys in Bargello. I'm gonna just do a Bargello one. But for now, these are our new blocks for this quilt. This is actually block C. This is block D. You want to see this quilt? I don't know when it's going to be out, but I hope you guys enjoyed this cutting of strip sets and sewing of strip sets, and it makes it a little easier on you later on. All right, talk to you later. Bye.